Hello, Steve here in the desert once again, escaping the rains of Vancouver. Today I want to talk about what to do when you have that block, that anxiety block that prevents you from speaking. I had a number of people ask me that question. I have it, everyone has it to varying degrees. I remember in Vancouver before coming down here, I went to the barber. My barber, Vadim, the Russian-speaking Ukrainian barber, whenever I go there, and I always like to have my hair cut there because we speak Russian. And so we're totally into our Russian discussion, and in walks one of his customers, a Japanese girl, 25-year-old girl who's been living in Vancouver for a few years. And so Vadim says, speak to her in Japanese. So I switched to Japanese, and of course we had a conversation in Japanese, but very common words in Japanese that I'm used to having no trouble recalling, all of a sudden my brain went to Russian. I couldn't get, like, there, for example. Tam is not, tam is there was a block. And I've had this before. I was in Vienna on my way to Romania, and I'd been studying Romanian. And I was at a dinner, and there were some Czech people there. And despite my year of studying Czech, I couldn't get a word of Czech out. I was totally blocked. And the more I tried to speak Czech, the more I couldn't. And so this happened. So what do you do? Well, in those cases, for example, Japanese is not a big issue. I have no trouble switching to Japanese. And if once got into the conversation, of course, I was finding all the words that I needed to find. Czech, I don't speak as well. I would have to spend an hour or two listening to Czech, getting back into that Czech environment, because it's not only to give your brain more practice with the language, but it's also that the environment matters. If I'm with Vadim and it's a Russian environment, and all of a sudden, Japanese enters the picture, it's a little more difficult. I'm in a Romanian environment. In fact, at this reception, there were other Romanians. I was practicing the Romanian that I'd been learning, and all of a sudden there's a Czech person. I just couldn't switch. So that the mood you're in matters. It's also often a matter of how you relate to the people you're talking to. Some people, I've noticed this, I speak a language that I'm learning or I don't speak so well, I speak it better with certain people than with other people, because it creates a sort of a pleasant, resonance within me. So all of these things affect it. And so therefore you take it one step further. If you feel anxiety, if you feel you're in a situation where you're afraid to speak, or any negativity is going to impede your ability to speak well. So we have to recognize this. And so some people, because they feel anxious about how they sound, or how they're going to do, or because they want so much to perform well, that puts pressure on them, and then they don't perform well. Or in fact, they do perform well, but they think they don't perform well. All of this anxiety is very negative. So my advice to people is, first of all, make sure that you invest a lot of time and effort in lots of listening and reading. Build up your comprehension, build up your vocabulary, so that you're confident that you're going to understand what people say. Because if you don't understand what they're saying, that only adds to the anxiety. So that's one thing. But the second thing is, if you feel this anxiety, you have to recognize that it is, in a way, it's not real. It's a form of obsessive-compulsive behavior. It's like people who feel they have to wash their hands every 5 minutes. It's a pattern in your brain that is telling you that you should feel nervous and you should feel uptight, and all of this prevents you from retrieving words that you have in your brain, and it prevents you from speaking as fluently as you could. So there, I have mentioned in a previous video, on several occasions in fact, the work of Jeffrey Schwartz, who wrote a book called The Mind and the Brain, where he points out that the mind, our determination and our willfulness can influence how the brain works. And when he has clients, patients with obsessive-compulsive behavior, rather than using drugs, he has a treatment which is based on getting these patients to recognize that this behavior pattern is not them. It's something that the brain is doing, but that they can, in fact, get the brain to stop doing. And so you have to say to yourself, if I can reduce the tension and the pressure and the anxiety, then I'm going to do better. So therefore, every time I communicate in the language, I should say, good, I communicated. Not worry about what I missed or forgot, or worry about how I sounded. Simply say, I did well. I did as well as I was able to do. And if I continue speaking and listening and reading, I will only get better. I will not get worse. In other words, try to remove the anxiety. Now, that sounds easier said than done. Many people will continue to feel this block. And I guess you just have to train yourself. Recognize, this is not me. I don't have to feel this anxiety. I can, instead of feeling the anxiety, I can bit by bit recognize that I'm doing well. And if I take some of the anxiety away, I'll even start doing better. And so that I will continue to improve. So really, that's the only advice I can give. I don't feel while I have situations, just like if I'm at a party and someone walks in and I can't remember their name, the more I try to think of that person's name, the less likely I am to remember the name, because I've created this anxiety. So you have to remove the anxiety. Now, how you go about doing that, again, recognize that it's something you can do. Like so much in language learning, your own will and determination can influence how the brain performs, how well it learns, and how well it uses the language. That's my advice. I hope that answers the question. Thank you for listening.